SOT West, coming at you from NTC, Off the Radar.
This is Off the Radar. I'm Captain Weston Rich, an observer coach trainer for the Green Berets at the National Training Center. Conflict is a constant in history, and our world today is a patchwork of conflicts and near conflicts between both nation-states and non-state violent extremist organizations. In this dynamic and ever-changing world, is Army Special Operations Forces, or ARSOF, prepared for the next conflict? How does ARSOF best prepare for the next conflict? Welcome to Off the Radar. I'm your host, Captain Weston Rich. With us today to discuss these questions and more is Master Sergeant Steve Connor, the current Sergeant Major of SOF Plans and the Burro Team, the Special Operations Forces Observer Coach Trainer Team here at the National Training Center. Steve, please provide a little background on yourself and your experience in SOF and at the National Training Center.
Absolutely. So as previously briefed, Master Sergeant Steve Connor, I've been here for about a year and a half. Started out as the AOB Ops NCO, and then about 6 months ago took over as the Sergeant Major for all of SOF operations here at the National Training Center. Quick background on myself. I've been in SOF for about 18 years. Came in as an 18 X-ray. Spent my majority of time before coming out here in fifth group. Did about 3 years TSOC time. Right after my 18 Fox time, came back from TSOC. Got a couple more trips across the pond in, and then post-team sergeant time was selected to come out here and fill the position for AOB Ops. Filled the gap in, as I said before, after about my first year here. So yeah, I've been here about 2 years.
Thank you for having multiple combat rotations in and out of CENTCOM. How do you feel like previous training versus what the National Training Center offers prepares operational detachment alphas or ODAs for the combat that they've experienced over the last 20 years and the combat that they could likely experience in the next several years?
That's a good question. It's tricky because what we've grown accustomed to and been used to for the last 2 decades plus has been competition-based, engagements and planning. I think, fortunately enough for us, when we talk about how we in SOF approach mission planning, profession of arms, readiness, I think a lot of those tools keep us ready and keep us sharp in how we conduct operations, and how we treat everything as an operation, and prepare ourselves in our training plans. I think at the same time, though, there are going to be some lessons that we're going to have to continue to kind of stress and learn as we kind of mentally switch from that competition mindset and focus to conflict. What I think we have the advantage of is we can draw a lot of good lessons learned from those experiences that we've had to learn sometimes the hard way from the last couple of decades. So I think overall readiness, yeah, we're definitely there, but there are definitely some things that as we transition over to conflict and crisis that we're going to have to definitely massage through and ensure that we train the force on.
Can you briefly explain from kind of like a team sergeant level what the difference of competition versus conflict would be?
Yeah. So permissiveness of the environment for sure is a big piece of that. Say readiness of your coalition partners, of what we take for granted in competition, whether it's freedom of movement, readiness of sustainment, supply, the urgency with which things have to be staffed and actioned, much more the predictability of things, right? I think we're all, especially in groups, and I'm probably sure this is true for most of the SOF enterprises, we always talk about the playbook, like, oh, I'm going on this deployment in 6 months or 12 months. I've got this JSET coming up. Be working with this country team, in this country. It's all very predictable to a certain extent, right? As much as it can be, versus what I feel like the transition to conflict and crisis, where there's going to be a lot of things where we're going to have to be super reliant on our SOPs, our TTPs, our staff functionality, our interoperability just within the SOF triad itself, where we're going to have to be much more want to say reactionary, but comfortable with a higher level of unknowns. Again, and more reliant on, our own systems and processes for addressing issues, as opposed to being, at that 100% solution in terms of planning, where we have to, have everything mapped out and a high degree of certainty, where, versus, we push into a conflict or crisis situation where it's like, all right, no, now we have to be comfortable with the, 75-80% solution, and just kind of expect or be able to rely on, our proficiency in things to be successful.
Prior to being assigned here, while you were at 5th Group, did you ever do a rotation as the rotational training unit at the National Training Center or Joint Readiness Training Center?
I did JRTC. Oh God, I did JRTC back in, I want to say it was 12. It was an ODA. We were preparing for village stability operations. Again, going back to the conversation we just had about, or talking points we just had about competition, that was very much, a competition type environment where, we were prepared to do village stability operations, where we had, a dominating presence in the districts in the province we were in. So it wasn't really geared or designed the same way that, like, now if you come to NTC or JRTC, completely different situation. So I did have a JRTC experience, to answer your question more directly, but it was nothing like, we experience when we run here or they run at Fort Johnson.
Yeah, so back in 2012, it sounds like it kind of fit more as preparing you for what you could see in Afghanistan at the time. And now at NTC, we focus on large-scale conflict operations and working with brigade combat teams and or higher units such as a division, like we just did back in January of 24. So did you have any expectations coming into NTC and taking over the NCOSE job of AOB West?
I was definitely prepared to know that I was coming in probably not fully understanding the mission set and the problem set. As I was leaving group about 2 years ago, like, it was just, I felt like that's when, like, the whispers of, this LSCO mission set were just starting to, like, really sort of trickle in and kind of take hold at the team level. Like, hey, there's this thing called LSCO coming. Let's start focusing on that and figuring out where it fits into our training plan. I think if you look at, like, traditional ODA training plans and, like, how much we prioritize getting ready for, crisis or conflict, like, it's not really in there a whole lot. So that exposure at the team level is at least it was 2 years ago, pretty light. So yeah, I knew I'd walk into a lot of unknowns and I'd probably learn a lot, but I didn't, beyond that, no, I just knew that there was gonna be a bit of a curve coming at
yeah, definitely. And I would say the same.
Yeah.
For my seat, definitely, like, detachment level battle focus analysis and training calendars don't have LSCO on there. They're more focused about what's the next JSET or whatever you're going to do. And we get that from teams that come here. They're saying, hey, we're preparing for this larger event and we're here. And it's like, that's great. Now you're at NTC. Let's focus on the 3 weeks that you're here. And if you would, Steve, just describe from, like, your viewpoint what NTC is and isn't for ARSOF units.
This segue is really good from our last question, because I was thinking about that one a little more in terms of, how ready are you as an OC to come out here. It kind of really breaks into, like, two things in my mind, two pots, where you're still going to be tested at, your tactical proficiencies, MDMP, TLP, going out there executing, on the objective, how well you deal with contingencies and the planning of those, how well you're making just basic coordinations. But again, like, coming out here, we really challenge, the teams, and more importantly, like, the ODBs or the AOBs and the CMOCs and the TPDs, I think is, like, one, working not just in your little silo of excellence of, TPT and a couple, TPD, a couple TPTs, or, a couple CAT teams and a CMOC. It's like, all right, now take all three of those things together, make them work, which is already, can be a sticky thing. But now also make it work and jive and mesh with, a conventional brigade or a conventional division in real time. So what it is it's you dealing with almost this soft triad of, all right, let's get all three of our ducks in a row. we understand and we can, cooperatively work on, one coherent, or a series of coherent lines of effort. But okay, now mesh that with a brigade that's trying to figure out its warfighting functions and its functionality and its ability to kind of predict and anticipate any maneuver against a live and free-thinking enemy. Now mesh or bolt your soft equities into that. It presents a really dynamic and complex problem set, which is good, which I think is tremendous, and that's what the CTC is it's you getting pitted up against all these unique, different problem sets at different echelons in real time, against what is probably the most dynamic training environment that I think probably exists in the world. I'll say that with a certain degree of confidence between here and JRTC. Like I don't know if you really go anywhere else and find, the multi-domain challenges and the different aspects of, having to balance the various warfighting functions and do that all in real time with, again, against a live free-thinking enemy that if you mess up, like he's gonna punch you in the face with it. So that's what the CTC is. I'd say what it's not, and I think, people maybe misconstrue this a little bit, is it's not like a pre-mission train up. It's not like a series of 6 lanes. It's not, as opposed to me as a team sergeant where it's like, all right, I'm going to run this concept and I'm going to go after these specific training objectives. Like that's not for me to decide when I come out to a CTC. It's like, no, like I'm being directed by USASOC and by the SOT leaders to pursue very specific training objectives, and I need to figure out, all right, what do I need to do to be successful to achieve those standards, and learn and grow as a leader, as a unit, where I fit within the soft triad and the larger conflict and fight with the conventional force. So, yeah,
there's a lot, and you had a lot of really good things, and we should unpack some of that further. We'll go down the what it's not and kind of maybe the negative aspects that ARSOF units might have coming here. You said it's not 6 lanes, it's not a pre-mission training. I think you would also agree it's probably that it's not a validation or certification exercise in the conventional sense of, while they do teams and AOBs report to higher echelons and do staff functions and can be certified on things like that, it's not specifically focused on their next mission, and it shouldn't be used as a certification or validation for that JSET or whatever else that they may be going to do in the near term. From a team guy perspective, I think you'd agree that you want to be the master of your own destiny when it comes to training. You want to make your plan and you want to execute your plan, but that's not what NTC is. You mentioned guidance from the USASOC commander says train on these things, and you're going to go to a CTC or a combat training center to do it. And some teams accept that mindset and some teams don't really. And when I say teams, I'm talking not just special forces, I'm talking ARSOF holistically, to include the company level. And those are the things that kind of NTC isn't. How do we package that up and get ARSOF on board with this? This is what you're not. Don't focus on what it's not. Focus on what it is. So is there anything else you'd want to add to NTC is not X?
Well, I'd say, think about it like this. I don't go to SOFAWIC. I don't go there to learn what my SOPs and TTPs are, right? I go there already having established, and expectation-wise, the cadre at SOFAWIC are going to expect you to show up with a higher degree of proficiency in executing operations. Again, SOFAWIC, urban combat operations. But I think the mindset of you coming out here and having those tactical level proficiencies already mapped out and ready to go, I think it's going to prepare you to be in an environment where those things can still be challenged. And you can almost, I always say it's not a validation, but as a team sergeant, as a detachment commander, as an AOB commander, as a star major, pick whatever element within the soft triad, you are still going to be challenged in those things, and you're still going to be able to do an internal validation of okay, this is how we understood how our AOB staff would function, or this is how our team would go through the steps of, MDMP or TOP in an austere or difficult environment, where we can't just pull a PowerPoint and just knock out a con op. So I think you are still provided the opportunity to do those things. But yeah, I think if you come out and you expect and you're going to be, able to recock things or have a decision on like how this free flowing, live exercise plays out, like then yeah, I think you'll be kind of sorely mistaken, kind of setting yourselves, up for failure there. But I think if you come in here with the mindset of like, all right, we know the CTC exercise is coming up. Let's make sure we're proficient in our SOPs at the tactical level, at the AOB level, or the CMOC or CPT level. Let's understand like how we fit into the larger soft triad of functionality, how we communicate, how we information share, how we nest our lines of effort, and a lot of that goes back to coordinating and deconflicting and joint planning before you even come out here, which I staunchly encourage people to do. When you come out here, you're very much going to be in a position where it's like, all right, well, we rehearsed all these things, we practiced these things to what time would allow us to do, and you're coming out here, and I hate to say it's a case study, it's an experiment, but it's certainly an opportunity for you to learn what does and doesn't work. And because it's not like an actual validation exercise, and there's not like an RI or some cadre member sitting behind you with a task list being like, well, you didn't do this step right, you fail. You're allowed to make mistakes. I think that's really what separates us from maybe like a PMT, where if you fail certain steps, and you may be critiqued poorly, and leaders may take action on that. But here it's not like here. I'm not saying we encourage people to fail. What we do encourage people to do is experiment and try new things and understand the unique problem set that LSCO is and how SOF fits into LSCO. So I would say like it's an opportunity. I would view it as an opportunity, like, because you're not going to fail, man. Like, just try different things, and if it doesn't work, okay, that's fine. You're going to get another mission tomorrow. It's going to come down, and you're going to have another opportunity to take another crack at it. So
yeah. I mean, failure isn't failure in training, in the sense that, like, okay, you didn't accomplish that mission, but tomorrow you will have another crack, like you said. And it goes back to their mindset. So if they're not going to put forth the effort, then they're probably going to continue to fail. But the good organizations come out here, test things, try things. Some things work great, some things fall to pieces, and they pick those pieces up and they move forward. You talked about it's not like a PMT. We're not going to recock you. There's a live, free-thinking enemy out there, and it's a ever-developing situation. It's pretty unique in that kind of way, that you actually have a whole almost brigade worth of opposing force out there in a training area that's bigger than anything else the U.S. Army has to offer. Might be the largest training area in the world. I don't know.
Superbox definitely is.
We won't talk about the Superbox. No, I'm just kidding. We can talk about the Superbox, but I think that was a good synopsis of like what it isn't. And if you could just run down a quick the role of a observer coach trainer, so that anybody listening could understand what that guy or girl is, and that they're not an RI and they're there to help.
Yeah, sure. No, so yeah, they're not validators. They're not graders. They are there primarily for, well, I don't want to say like primarily for safety, but no one outranks sergeant safety. But no, so safety is important, absolutely. Like, we don't want people to get hurt coming out here, so we take safety seriously. But beyond just that, like, because it is a dynamic environment, or it's a brigade on brigade fight across multiple domains, and because there's a lot of moving pieces, things aren't always going to sync up exactly the way they should. So OCs are also there to make sure that the scenario stays synced. They're not there to circumvent the chain of command. They're not there to give things away. They're there to adjudicate, to make sure, all right, this tactical engagement happens. Not only is it happening safely, but when everyone's out there playing laser tag, sometimes there can be confusion. So OCs are there to help circumvent, help the RTUs, or the rotational training units, navigate some of that confusion, or the fog of just what the training environment can be at times. But really, at the end of the day, like I would say, in the simplest words, the OCs are there to ensure that the training environment stays realistic and safe and conducive to being a place where the teams can actually truly test themselves and maximize learning opportunities and potential.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree, seeing as that's my job during the rotations. At least that's the way I like to see it. Not providing the teams with any G2, but trying to keep them driving forward so that they get the most learning out of the exercise. Can you describe, I mean, you've already touched on things like multi-domain operations, how there's OPT4 out there, the austere environment, working with civil affairs, psychological operations, special forces, conventional forces. Like, these are things that make a combat training center unique because they're things that at home station you don't have.
Sure.
So what other value or expand on those as the value proposition for coming to NTC?
Ooh, this is where the PAO might get mad at me. No, I'm kidding. I think to your point, I think we all exist to a certain extent within, at least within SOF, our silos of excellence. And, obviously a CAT team knows what a CAT team does and an ODA knows what an ODA does. But you start putting us together, there's always, a bit of a learning curve on how exactly can we work together to be overall more effective and efficient. So this place, definitely provides that opportunity and forces that, that interoperability and functionality. So I would say like that's probably at the core of what this place offers, and what people may not expect from it. And then you slap in the whole premise of, doing, multi-domain type operations where, again, I'm not saying it's something necessarily new to special operations, but the role and function and the opportunity that SOF has to, I don't want to say inject, but maybe find itself in being able to leverage or seek dominance in those unique domains is pretty unique here. And again, to go back to the comment of, a case study or an opportunity to kind of refine doctrine, like that's also what this place is for, the larger USASOC enterprise. It's us kind of almost collectively looking at these complex problem sets and then understanding, okay, how do we best fit in here, and where can we more refine, our priorities and our objectives and guidance down to, lower echelons to figure out exactly where we best fit. And then I think with all that too, like we're packaging all that up and we're messaging it out to the rest of the larger conventional force. Because what I found out here, you talk to various leaders on the conventional side, and they know what they're doing. But just like when I was talking about SF, CA, PSYOP, and us trying to understand each other, like the conventional side is also just trying to understand like what role we play, and we're messaging that to them. Either by interaction, by demonstrations of proficiency, by informing them, by helping them drive towards their objectives, or meshing ourselves in their lines of effort. So I think that's another cool aspect of this environment here at the CTC, is that we flush those things out in real time. And I think an advantage of it is every rotation, I think we as an organization learn a little bit more each time. So that's what this place does offer, not only the RTU or the rotational training unit, but also offers us as OCs, and then the larger USASOC organization as a whole is like, okay, this is what we picked up on this one. These are the trends. These are the lessons learned that we're taking away from this, and we make the next exercise that much better because of it. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah. And I would say that every rotation is different, and we do try to incorporate things that we've learned while observing training units, just as you said. I think, to your point, it's kind of gone are the days where you can say SOF is out there doing SOF things. You have to present a well-informed value proposition to the conventional force, and the touch point is kind of at the company level traditionally that we've had. Not just the company commander or sergeant major but like they also send a representative as a liaison to the brigade or the division to be the representative of all SOF equities. So you kind of have usually an 18 Alpha and an NCO who typically is also 18 series trying to represent, hey, what can CA and PSYOPs also give the brigade combat team? And we really need to have that understanding across all of ARSOF. What do we give to each other and what do we give to the conventional force? And the teams, the units that come here are, influencing doctrine, like you said, especially on our most recent rotation. We had lots of brass from across the Army and Special Operations come out and observe what a SF company with all of the ARSOF tribes and other enablers can provide a conventional division in terms of not only time and space on the battlefield, but those multi-domain effects. So how would you say your understanding, I know it's kind of a newer doctrine on MDO, but going back, when you go back to 5th Group, how are you going to teach, coach, mentor detachments to focus on MDO as a training objective at home station? Or would you encourage or volunteer to come back out here as the rotational training unit?
I think a lot of it is going to rely on an ability as a leader when I go back to really message the importance of understanding what it is that everyone else does, what it is what CMOCs do, what it is that TPDs do, how does a brigade maneuver, how do they plan? Because I think at the end of the day, like the friction points we often see here, not to get too specific, but they all relate to just general understanding. I think what we've kind of found as a trend here is once you're able to really, integrate, then you're able to better synchronize. And I say it because, the integration piece is, if I understand what you're doing and you understand what I'm doing, okay, now we're integrated. But, if my goal is to synchronize, like I have to start with that baseline of understanding. So I think at the very minimum, it's, an appreciation for what else exists, not only in, the different soft camps, but also like how the conventional force fights. So I think seeking opportunities to either one, better understand, conventional functionality and, how they fight. I think that's important. But also just appreciation of, the other camps within SOF and what they bring to the table, so that we can best kind of, employ them and, they can support us and we can support them and, they can employ us because, as this SOF, the SOF utility in conflict and crisis, as we better kind of refine, what our role and function is, we'll get better, better proficiencies there. But at the same time, it's one of those things that I think certainly to an extent can atrophy if we're not paying attention to it. Once we go back home, we leave the CTCs, if we're not, staying up on lessons learned and trends, and we're not keeping apprised of, the latest and greatest. Because I think, I mention that because I think, things, they do constantly change and they evolve, as our understanding continues to kind of adapt and we mold our understanding. So I think the next point would be just like staying apprised of those trends and those lessons learned, and like not only just what's coming from the CTCs, but what we're seeing from what's happening in places like Ukraine, because there's a lot of goodness coming out of there too. So I think again, like to my original point, like the focus is going to be just staying informed, because there's only so much you can do with what you have there organically. Like you can send people to battle staff, or you can run like CP exercises, or you can do like field exercises to maintain that tactical level proficiency. But at the same time, like you need to arm yourself with information and understanding across not only the different components of again, that SOF triad, but also the conventional force as a whole and how their doctrine continues to evolve.
With that, we will conclude this first episode of Off the Radar. Steve, thank you for your time and sharing your experiences and your insights. We will continue this conversation in episode 2, where we will discuss the incorporation of real-world lessons learned, success at NTC, and more. Thank you for listening to Off the Radar
where ARSOF prepares for conflict.
You have been off the radar with Sandeep.